So just thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to present the material. Just from a high level, the top features are the platform features that we deliver today out of the box is really document-centric content management. We have document capture, document indexing, document management capabilities, governance and protection tooling, workflow and automation tooling, several integrations, including OpenText products, Microsoft products, Oracle products, OEM solutions that are out there, a lot of partner-built solutions that are out there, and lots of departmental solutions across different businesses. So you can integrate this platform at many different levels based on your footprint and your needs for content management. It could be as lightweight as a small department. It could be as enterprise as a large hospital. So we really go with the use cases, but we really serve quite a good niche for document management at a low cost. And it's really the solution for document management within OpenText as a mid-market document management solution. That said, I really want to step back and talk about the themes of the product. A lot of the new forward-facing guidelines that we've given ourselves for where we're going. These 4 pillars are really our pillars of excellence within the product, where we're trying to build up new functionality, where we're trying to augment existing functionality. And so that's around artificial intelligence, using our machine learning technologies, our agentic AI tooling in the form of the Aviator tooling, really to help augment a repository that's mostly static in a lot of places to bring insights into that data that's there. Also to help bring the data in and ingest it in a much more intelligent way than we've ever done before, which is around our indexing and classification and a lot of the machine learning capabilities that we can do at the ground level AI. Really machine learning is where we can get started in classifying documents. And we'll get into that a little greater detail as I go through the AI slides, but really it's around augmenting our existing repository with intelligence for bringing documents in, intelligence for processing documents that are there, intelligence for training documents, training it on the documents in your repository, so the content that you're working with. It's really important there, is it's not just generic content. It's the intelligence comes from your documents. So that's our AI pillar. We also have an embedded workflow that we've added to the product recently, which is an out-of-the-box workflow, which allows us to bring some out-of-the-box workflow capability to end users through user tasks and basic use cases. This is not a customizable, like coded workflow where you're going in and adjusting code and creating maps. That's really what the enterprise workflow is for in OPA. But our built-in doc routing is really around serving use cases where customers just need to move documents between one another within the environment. Maybe it's for an approval, maybe it's for a review, maybe it's to add additional content or to sign it. Whatever it might be, it's really around that kind of document engagement and routing and those simple workflows that take place within the environment. We really don't need to code those. We want those out of the box and available at all times to customers, whether they purchase workflow or not. This allows us to do a lot of document automation capabilities, and it's very simple to adopt because it's built directly into the interface, kind of like an OEM component. The modern experience goes without saying. We need to update our UI to get away from the old EMC-centric UI, both in security because of the old Angular JS capabilities that we had there and that technology stack, but also to use a more composable view, something that's more accessible to users and users that might have disabilities, just a better interface for us all around, and one that's common across the OpenText portfolio of products. So OpenText has a framework called JATO, the Jet Assisted Takeoff Framework, and that modern standardized technology stack for UI is what's being applied to AppEnhancer, and that's what I'll show you today in our JATO Phase 2 work that we've done. We also have a desktop connector which also follows those JATO standards and the new UI look and feel. So you'll notice that if you look at the connector as well. But really it's about having this new look and feel that looks and feels like a standard OpenText product, like something that we're investing in, like something that exists in an ecosystem of modern products within OpenText. So very important for us there, and very important for users because it gives them a fresh user experience and one that's accessible and that has a little more intuitive uses within it. And we'll look at that today. Lastly is cloud supportability. Really, our goal is to be able to deploy this anywhere you want, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud or in a hybrid configuration, but really it's around simplifying deployment through our Linux-based containers, so a lightweight deployment capability there with cloud-ready architecture built in. So it's really for all of our components, and I'll show you that when we get to the cloud slides. Container orchestration and cloud infrastructure capabilities are all kind of bundled in that supportability strategy. So we want to be able to deploy, we want to support cloud infrastructure, we want to support cloud orchestration. These are the 4 pillars for our directional themes for the product. Let's talk about 25.4. So 25.4 is our latest release. That's coming out within the next week, couple weeks. That we're in our GA phase. We're just in the final stages of QA and testing and security. But really, there's 4 focus areas in this release. There's the phase 2 of the JATO UI, which I'll show you today. There's the desktop connector, which is there's some updates to the connector in the form of a viewer. We've got the integrated viewer now bundled in from the unified web server. It supports OAuth today now, and it supports full JATO UI. So that's the connector. We'll look at that today. The unified web server is a milestone for us. This is a departure from the traditional web stack that we've had today, and it allows us to create a single instance that serves all the objects, including the viewer, for our customers. And then we can build clients on top of that, including the desktop connector, but also our existing HTTP interface is also a client to the web server. With this unified web server now is the core web component and core API model for accessing AppEnhancer. So it's a really important milestone for us because it allows us to containerize the entire web stack. And as we move forward, we're unifying a lot of our servers so that we can have everything nicely packaged in a centralized component that can be containerized and scaled basically to hyperscale techniques with using like Kubernetes or other orchestration tooling. So that's really important for us, and I'll talk to you about that as we go through the slides further in the later in the deck as we go through more of the roadmap. Nonetheless, that's very important. I'd say that's one of the most critical pieces on this release. And then also the import utilities. We've added automation for the import utilities in the form of polling and remote logging, so you can get better log details and better polling. I don't have a demo for that today, but there's great documentation there, and there'll be a YouTube video that'll show that coming up within the next couple of weeks. So what we'll do, I'll talk about JATO first. Now, JATO is our modernized navigation and layout for OpenText. We want consistency across all our modules, and so really that helps us have the same controls and nothing too custom across the platform as we look at our UI, whether it's desktop, whether it's web. And accessibility and compliance are built into this UI. So we've got a couple components, and I'll demo these, but I just want to show you on the screen. The JATO phase 2 is about bringing in more shell components like the global user menus, the about dialogues, the login screens. There's a new hamburger menu. There's the home page that we land in that you'll see right here, and I'll show you that when we log in. Some new application sidebar and switchers, and then an application page. And then you'll notice some older controls are then mixed in there as well to augment where we haven't received all the JATO components from our UX team. So it is a phased approach, and like I said, this is phase 2. Phase 1 was getting the foundational components laid and having the frameworks there, but phase 2 is really getting a lot of the controls in there for you. There's a lot of great benefits to this as we've moved off of AngularJS as well. So in order to support JATO and the new UI with the old UI, we've had to migrate the old UI to Angular, which is great for security. AngularJS doesn't really correspond to modern security standards any longer, and it's out of development. And so this is really good for us because it also includes this migration. And we've got a lot of components that have been migrated over to Angular. We've also got our iDocument interface, which I'll show you as we go through. And this is really around having a encapsulated viewer that's built into the web server. So we have an integrated viewer. Again, if that makes sense to any of you on the call, we lost that integrated view when we went to AX8 and the HTML5 interface and REST. REST was stateless and had no viewer with it, but it had a great API. This has a combination of both. So you can be in REST, you can ask for the viewer, and it'll initiate a viewer without pulling another license because you've already got a session. And so it's really helping bring that transportable, composable document viewer, that embeddable viewer, back into the mix for customers. So really, I'm going to go ahead and demo this now for you before we get back to the slides. Let's bring this up. This is our 25.4 login screen. Just go ahead and log in. This is the web client, the client to the unified web server. You'll notice first I get to a landing page, which has all the cards for the different applications. This is the first iteration of this. We're actually going to allow you to customize these cards a little bit to add, your own avatars or any notes and such to these cards if you want, and reorder them. Right now, they just represent the applications in the environment. There's also a pane at the top that shows all your saved queries and queries that you've run as saved searches. And we'll probably use this real estate for workflow stuff as well as we start to integrate workflow with JATO. You'll notice there's a hamburger menu here that brings up your application list here as well, or takes you back to that home screen. There's also unified search, which will run search across all these apps for you. That's pretty simple, but it's very robust as far as its capabilities. This is a fully accessible UI, so everything here is accessible. You can tab through stuff. Everything's tab capable. Everything can be read with a screen reader. So it's very accessible for the customers that are really that's importance to them. Like in higher education, for example, there's a lot of demand for accessibility on the website, and so this helps fulfill that. Everything that's JATO is accessible. We also have the main title bar here and user information. So our about screens have been updated. Our user profile settings have been updated. Nonetheless, this is the JATO UI. I'll go ahead and open an app. I'll do a better one than a rubber stamp. We'll go into an AP app. And you'll notice that we have now our documents, our search builder, our saved searches for this particular application. Now that we're in AP, you'll notice that's the current context. You can collapse this bar right here at any time, but it's got the context for the apps that we're in and the search builder. So the new unified web server has the Swagger page for all of the new APIs that we've defined. This is the API set that you should start adopting now. Instead of REST. This is much more functional, and it's like I said, it's embedded with all the UI capabilities that you might want to gain access to as an API user. So you could be using the API, but you maybe you want to send off to a user, the viewer, for a particular document that you're working on. In this case, you can call for the document's URL and send that back to the caller, and then they can do with it what they will, put it in an iframe or redirect the user to it. So really, this gives us a lot more capabilities than we had in our traditional REST service, and it's much more organized. You'll also notice that this stuff will show up on the OpenText developer cloud. So you'll be able to get all the documentation there for it. This is the Swagger page, but there'll be a full documentation available right there on the developer cloud for you. Administrator hasn't changed too much. We can log in and show you, but there's just a few additional options for OAuth stuff, but this is pretty much the same user experience. We have not got to JATO here. This is our phase 4 for JATO. We also have this traditional App Extender web access, or AppEnhancer web access, coming from the old App Extender days. Same thing. This is now Angular. which is good. So it's using Angular instead of AngularJS, but all in the same, it's the traditional UI that you know and love. Not much has changed here, although it's all Angular, so it's a little faster, more secure, a lot easier to pivot to the new JATO stuff, but still allowing you to use this legacy UI until you're comfortable with moving over to the JATO UI. And lastly, our REST engine. So this is the traditional REST site. Like I said, I would consider moving over to the new Unified Web Servers REST API. It's more comprehensive. It's less static. We're not saying that you need to revamp all your code, because you can bring that code over to the Unified Web Server and it will work. But there's additional functions that are here that aren't in the traditional REST service, because this is a standalone service, does not have any UI capabilities or any ability to redirect a user, for example, to a URL or anything like that. And so again, we're really hoping that folks start to adopt our Unified Web Server and its APIs as we move forward. And that will take over as the primary web server and client and API instance for you. Okay, lastly is our connector. Go down here and show you some of the new features of the connector. Here you'll configure it to use the Unified Web Server now. And it also will look at the traditional AppEnhancer web access environment if that's out there too, if you're not using the Unified Web Server, which you should be, because it gives you all the full feature set and the embedded viewer. And so I'm connected. I'm going to connect here as well. Yep, we're fully connected. So what I'll show you is some of the new capabilities. So if I go run a search for a bunch of documents in here, hold on, let me log back in. There we go. And back to our apps. I'll just run a query on AP. You'll notice here that the new version now has an embedded viewer. We are using the Unified Web Server to go call that document URL and bring it to our users. So we have the embedded viewer right here within the application, so that you never have to transition out of the app, but it still has the look and feel that you're used to. And as we add JATO components here, you'll see the JATO look and feel as well. So that's really the big piece here. We've also added OAuth support in this tool. So if you go back here and look, we have OAuth capabilities that you can turn on to be able to use OAuth with this for login. Those are really the big features there, other than a couple UI revamps just to look more, like the toolbar here is more JATO-centric, menus and such. So that is our connector in 25.4. Okay, so that said, I'm kind of going to transition back. So now that you've seen some of the 25.4 stuff, really 25.4 is another step in the modernization track. Again, the Unified Web Server really replaces a lot of the older technology that we had within the web services, actually, where we had our embedded viewer. The polling and the import utilities help to replace some of those desktop tools. The connector, same thing, helps to replace those old desktop utilities, and JATO is the nice UI to look at up front. It's a good package. There's a lot there, especially when you come to the Unified Web Server. I really would love to see you partners get a hold of this, start looking at that new API set. Okay, so let's jump back into the vision slide that we looked at earlier, which is right here. So again, talking about our vision and our roadmap. It's about artificial intelligence. It's about a modern experience, embedding workflows to make ease of use for documents in the environment, to put them to work, and the cloud supportability. So I'll jump in and just bring this back up. Yeah, so and I'll flip this. Thank you. Okay, so when we talk about our AI strategy, this is a critical cornerstone of the product, and a big shift that we've made in our roadmap in order to get up on top of a lot of the AI strategy that's a larger part of OpenText, And that's we have two prongs to it. One is around applying AI at the lower levels for machine learning, and it's less agentic and more derivative of pulling intelligence out of our content as it comes in or as it's in the environment. So that's classification, enabling automated indexing, similar to what our intelligent capture tooling does. We're adding some ML to AppEnhancer to be able to augment the indexing tooling and not be so manual. And so automated classification and metadata extraction is something that we are putting into the product using our machine learning technologies. We're actually building smart search into the platform as well so that we can leverage the faceted conceptual search capabilities that are out there in our machine learning tools, and summarize documents using our AI tooling. So that allows you to take new documents into the system, classify them. So that's what the document intelligence is about. Metadata extraction is pretty straightforward. Getting content in and extracted at a high level of reliability. Smarter search is around faceted search, so filtering your searches, providing conceptual searches, which is something new to us here, less metadata driven and more smart search, like looking for specific concepts or phrases or subject matters within the environment. Since we've got all that textual data in idle, we can start to summarize it. But we also have all our documents in there. So the ML can be trained on the content that's in the environment, not just generic forms, generic invoices, generic medical records, generic student records. We are training on whatever's in your environment, whether it's yours or your customers. So that said, it continuously learns and adapts based on the documents that are coming in, and it can adjust as needed on the fly. So it's continuously learning. That's our first step in the AI-centric model, is really getting the content classified, getting it ingested in a very intelligent way, and having it all set up so that we can then provide that nice, rich textual content to the agentic AI. And that's where we get into doing more than just helping you use the app, but more helping you connect the app to other things. The first would be our support agent. We're going to bring a tier 1 assistant into the product so that it already has access to the documentation and the knowledge base and the community pages. It can answer your questions right then and there based on the context of where you are in the page. It can also help you with support. If you need to get support, we can help handle support requests. And we got your account information, we can go ahead and open a ticket for you. So the support agent is an agentic AI that helps you use the product better and answer your questions about the product. So really conversational. Moreover, a higher level would be the admin agent. You see that at the bottom. That's more about assisting administrators with configuration. So we can read all of our administration docs and our architecture docs and our cloud deployment guides and help you configure the environment for your environment. So assisting you in reviewing configurations, in reviewing performance reports, and performing health checks on the environment, and configuring them. And so really giving you access to like a more, not as much of a tier 1, but like a technical resource that's skilled in AppEnhancer based on our documentation. And it's a great way to help you get started in configuring. And if maybe you've got something you can't do, well, it can help you open an enhancement request. And it could probably even help you open a support request too. And so really the admin agent is like the user support agent for the admin. And those two agents we are hoping will help streamline the administration and the use of the product, where we have cases that come in for simplistic stuff, or UI related work, or workflow related stuff. And so that's the goal between those two agents. The content creation agent's a little different. That's more around case management, around different types of document workflows where you might be onboarding a user and have to generate a lot of documents, or maybe you're creating content for a report and you've got a template to work with, and this can take some information from the metadata and start to generate content for you on the fly that's purpose-built for a specific record or specific use. And so this is very much around streamlining a specific case. Now, AppEnhancer can be used in many different ways, and so it depends on the case that you're working with, what kind of content you're going to be creating. But this agent is a generic agent to help you generate rich content and then put it back into that repository. So think like HR onboarding, loan onboarding, any of those onboarding cases where you're generating docs and needing to adjust them, having users fill them out and get them back to you, stamping them. You can use this as a way to create that content for you. So it's all stacked up and ready to go, just by triggering it with some metadata. So those are our AI use cases here, and really it's about starting with machine learning and moving into agentic AI and embracing our Aviator tooling that OpenText has created in order to access those agentic models, and embracing the idle engine in order to get rich access to the text and the extraction engines behind that. As we move to the modern experience theme, it's really around modernizing our web UI. We've talked about that, using JATO. It's much more responsive and scalable. Our desktop connector is also using that. It's really a seamless bridge between Windows and the back end. So that is the replacement for your desktop tools. I really hope that everybody's off the desktop by now, because it's discontinued this summer. It's out of support at this point, and so anybody that's using 20.4 should really be considering moving to the later releases and getting onto the desktop connector if they need desktop use cases. It's got an embedded viewer now that I showed you, and it's a full unified tool set. And so it uses the same look and feel as our web, but it brings that web connection to the client. And there's some additional features we're building in there, like scanning and screen scraping and things like that are more desktop-centric use cases that will be fulfilled with that desktop connector with its integrated viewer. Lastly is comprehensive REST APIs. Our unified web server provides that single point for integrations. It's cloud ready. It's open with our technology now being posted on the developer cloud. You have access to our documentation freely available for everyone. Really, it's around making it future extensible, and that's containerizing the platform. So the comprehensive unified web server really encapsulates all of that in one image, which is really important for us. And it's fully documented on the developer cloud. As we move forward, you'll see that there's more unified web servers. When we look at our cloud supportability matrix here, these 4 pillars are the infrastructure pillars for our deployment in the cloud. We have our database, which is our core, where we keep all of the indexing data and metadata and such. Really, we support a pretty good amount of servers today as far as your relational database, and that's the SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, and MySQL. There are cloud-based components today available on all the major providers, from AWS, Azure, GCP, even OCI. All of these databases are now targeted. We're finalizing Oracle Autonomous database within the next release, but these other databases are available today, and they're deployable as databases as a service. So you don't need to stand up the infrastructure. You just need to initialize a database as a service and get a connection string, and so that's great. That's a great way to store your metadata without having to involve yourself in administering a bunch of VMs, even in the cloud. Next is our file system layer. We are a CIFS SMB environment, meaning we need Windows-style file shares, like a directory structure, in order to store our content. But that doesn't mean you can't use block storage or object storage. You need a gateway in order to convert that data into a way that we can read it as a CIFS or SMB only style environment. And so there are ways to do that. There's an FSX for Windows File Server, which is the chosen way to get Windows file sharing from Amazon. But you can also use S3, and there's a gateway for S3 that allows you to expose your S3 environment as SMB. The same with Azure Files. Azure Files has blocks below the configuration layer, and it can store everything, encrypted. It can store everything as objects, but at the upper level, we still need to expose it as SMB so that we can store our content the way we store it. And then the same thing with Google. There's a file store and there's an SMB gateway for file stores. That appliance you run in your environment, and it allows you to expose an SMB share that's a gateway to that backend. And so we do not support object and block storage today. That's something that we're researching, but it's really a big change, and it's not something that we look at lightly because we have a very high performance environment the way that we have it today, and putting it into a block / object storage lends itself to some of the capabilities that we ran into with old Centera back in the day, which was a similar technology stack, a little older, but again, there's a lot of layers of translation to get to where we need, which is a bin file. So really, we're a file system centric environment, but that doesn't mean we can't store that in a cloud environment like an Amazon S3 bucket. So these are capable, and we're putting out a cloud deployment guide within the next release that will help you understand how to configure for these. But these are all available today. So there's customers out there already using them. In the indexing and classification, this is the idle engine, and it already supports deployment in a containerized environment. It can already run highly scalable in a multi-node environment, but really that's our classification engine, that's our full text engine. It's critical for our AI modeling and to support our artificial intelligence roadmap. So, but it's not necessary. You can run your environment without it, but if you want the full text index data, if you want that rich classification capability and the knowledge that comes with it, then you're going to need to use the idle engine, which is part of our AppEnhancer full text engine. Lastly is our unified servers. And if you look, there's multiple servers on the list. We've started with our web server. We're actually unifying our workflow server, which is a combination of the EDB WIM components and the Flowable engine and the OPA integration. So all in one, simple and fully effective for the workflow capabilities that we need. The unified render / cache server is another one. We're revamping that environment to remove the legacy code to make that a .NET Core environment as well. All these will be .NET Core, which means we can deploy them in Linux containers. And so these unified servers represent the new architecture for the platform, where we're bringing everything together for those functions rather than spread them out on multiple installations. And then all servers can then be deployed and containerized. So you can put it in Docker locally, you could run it in Kubernetes, you could run it in another scheduler if you want. But at the end of the day, it should run on any platform because these are standard out-of-the-box Linux Docker images. Yeah, and so those are our user-facing services and integrations. That's the application layer for the application. So these 4 pillars really generate or represent rather all of the components that we would need to fully support the cloud, so that we can deploy and have a multi-tenant cloud environment without virtual machines, which is huge, especially for customers that are doing any type of hosting. Really, it's going to save you lots of money because VMs are inefficient when it comes to cloud deployment. Okay, so that said, let's talk a little bit about our release strategy and our roadmap. So you may have already heard that we've kind of moved to a 2-release, or we already have moved to a 2-release a year cycle, so every 6 months. But our first release of the year is what we call our innovation release. It's where we put in newer technology that we're experimenting with, or new stuff like our AI stuff that we're putting in 26.2. It's really new features that are backed with APIs and improvements to the platform that we want to get in your hands immediately, especially for integrators and testers and such. It's ideal for those types of early adopters, and it helps us get feedback for the long-term release, for iteration into that new release. Those releases only have a year of support because we expect that if you are adopting this, you're going to upgrade immediately to 25.4 when it becomes available as the long-term candidate for the data that's in that 25.2 release, in addition to whatever else we've put into the long-term release. And so it's a simple set of upgrades to be able to move from 25.2 to 4. It's a simple installation package, or you would just run the new container if you're using the containers. But really why this matters, it helps us streamline the upgrade path from innovation to LTE and it allows us to continuously innovate with a stable deployment option at the back end. So as we move more and more to the cloud and get more into this quarterly kind of style, which I don't know when we'll get there, but at some point we'll be releasing more containers than MSIs, then we can do more than 25. We can do lots of little innovation packets, but everything would then comprehensively build up to our long-term release that we would release once a year. And so right now we've got our innovation release at 25.2 and 25.4, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, is the long-term edition of that. And so all the features in 25.2 roll up into it, and then there's obviously some of the new ones that I just showed you. But that's the goal for that, and it just helps you with some more predictability in your planning, and it helps us get new advanced or innovative features out there more quickly for people to test. Okay, so a couple components that we're discontinuing in this release or deprecating. So we've already talked about the legacy desktop a little bit earlier. 20.4 has ended its current life cycle in July, and so we've replaced that with both the web and our desktop connector. And so legacy desktop is done. We're really trying to get away from that. It's not a very secure application at this point. It's kind of clunky. It's fast because it connects directly to all the infrastructure, but that's its downfall when it comes to security as well. And so it's not very cloud centric. It doesn't work with a lot of our authentication tooling, yada, yada, yada. It's not even rebranded. And so we're letting go of desktop, and web services will be on its last supported release in 25.4. So it's replaced pretty much with REST services. It's feature complete, and we haven't made changes to it in quite a while. And so we're saying this is the last release. We're no longer going to release it because as we move forward in other technologies like OAuth and other things, it's hard to go back and rewrite the SOAP engine just to support something new that we've added to the database. So we've had to let go and say SOAP is over. It's still there, but it's the last release. So in 26.2, you will not see a web services release. We will test it similarly to how we've tested desktop, ensuring that it works until it doesn't. And so that's on us, and we'll see how our testing goes in 26.2. That'll be the first one that we do that with. Lastly is the CTS licensing. This will be the last supported release of CTS. We've replaced that with OTDS. And it's really important to consider this because it is a single point of failure today. We cannot cluster this license service. We can't make it highly available without doing some trickery with your VMs and some DNS stuff. And so it's really kind of a dead end when it comes to HA. OTDS has a much more robust model for highly available services, and you can do a lot more with the licenses too. You can group them, you can generate reports, you can handle licensing as well as for other products. I mean, for all your OpenText products, you can host your licenses. And so I would consider starting your migration to OTDS as part of your upgrade for 25.4. You can request a SPS license or a CTS license. I would request an SPS license and stand up OTDS, get it working and get used to it. That's the new license server, and it's much more robust. So there's no reason for us to have two license servers at this point. We're doing it for compatibility and simplicity, but at this point it's redundant. And so this will be a last release of that. Okay, so before we get to the roadmap, I want to talk about our top innovations for the year, for the next year. And so for our we've really reshifted a lot of things. Our AI, ML, that smart metadata ingestion and the classification engine, and a lot of that, machine learning of your content is all going to go into one of our top grabs for the next year, and that's around AI. So in 26.2, you'll see that as we go into the roadmap, you'll see where that sits. But bringing our AI capabilities to the forefront with this product is really important. Starting here, moving into agentic in the later releases. But our first big innovation is to bring that smart metadata ingestion and classification in, and have some machine learning built into the product. The unified server, I showed you about the unified web servers. Really important to have those unified web servers, all the unified servers actually, to help build towards that cloud strategy. We've got a new HTTP interface, which is our new we called it the CDK, but it's the iSubmit query interface and the doc viewer and all of that. We've updated that and built that into the unified web server. We're building the unified rendering engine. So that's a complete revamp of the render engine to simplify and unify that technology into one container. The same with WIM and EDB, simplify, unify, to take a lot of the old antiquated technology stack out from under and rebuild as .NET Core. We're doing that next year. The JATO engine, the full completion of that UI is happening next year. The flowable engine, building out the templates that I talked about, not just the integration, but having customer-facing capabilities in the UI, that's happening next year. The desktop connector, being able to scan documents at the desktop level with the connector capability, that's coming next year. The viewer and the OAuth, we've already got that done. And the import automation, we've already got that done. We're talking fiscal 2026, which starts a little earlier than the calendar year. So those are our top 10 that we're really targeting for this roadmap that I'm about to show you now. So 25.2 and soon to be 25.4 releasing this year, which is the beginnings of the modernized user experience. The second phase of that experience with the landing pages, the navigation capabilities, the hamburger menus, the landing screens, all the shell basically replaced. That's now it's looking more like a modern UI. Plus, a lot of the core screens there are all accessible screens, which is great. The connector you saw, which is the integrated viewer, import utilities. We have polling and remote logging. Again, I'm posting a web video to the YouTube channel for that, so I encourage you to go to the YouTube channel and check that out. And then the unified web server, which is probably the biggest feature, biggest bang, I think, because of all the architecture that's involved here and just integrating and bringing everything into one place. This is really, really great. So that helps us build to the next set of unified engines, which is the unified render server and workflow server. The JATO phase 3, which is more screens, rounding out most of the screens in the UI at that point. We're missing query results, batch management, and some dressings to the viewer right now, but most everything else is there. And then maybe we can refine some of the cards and, like I said, build avatars around them and things like that. We can open that kind of stuff up then. Smart document ingestion. This artificial intelligence is really critical. Getting the ability to have machine learning at the front side of it, not just after the fact, after you've indexed content, but as you're bringing it in, we're going to need to redo our batch management and query and indexing management so that we can have an assistant rather than just have a document processor in the environment or batch queues. So we can have an automated queue that's dealing with things, and maybe it doesn't hit the threshold we want of what its reliance is, and maybe it's not confident enough that it made a match. Great, it can push it out to one of those users now, and those users are working at a little higher level where they're dealing with some of the exceptions rather than everything. So that's what we're hoping for with the smart metadata ingestion and document processing. And then the unified workflow and render server, that's just what that is modernizing the EDB WIM, modernizing our render engine for the future. As we move further out, it's about bringing that JATO capability to the administrator and bringing intelligent viewing to the product. Those UI capabilities are important for modernizing our viewer and getting my team away from having to build a viewer when we already build a viewer within OpenText. So using a more modern viewer that's standardized across our platforms, that's really important. And we feel that there's a good use of it now, that it's become more robust, that it's more mature than it was years ago. We're looking back at the what was Brava and Blazon and all that technology stack. We're looking at the unified intelligent viewing within OpenText as a replacement for our viewer. Not sure exactly when that's going to happen, but it's going to be 26x, maybe like 26.4 or 27.2. The artificial intelligence, this is when we get into more summarization of documents. We've done the smart metadata ingestion. The next phase is to start to build that intelligent search built into the product, summarizing content, bringing in your ability to catalog and categorize and faceted search those content objects out. Like browsing for it rather than searching against just simple metadata. So this summarization would allow you to take a subset of records and summarize those records into something that would, give you the gist of what's in there, or allow you to prompt for like a couple paragraphs of details on the documents, or allow you to just give me a couple sentences on what the highlights are. So really, it gives the user some control over how it summarizes, but it's allowing you to take multiple documents and rather than read every one of them in their entirety, let the AI read it and give you the core content, what the real gist of the document is, what the themes are, things like that. The connector is also being updated again. So like I said, scanning is one thing, import folders, and screen scraping is something that we're bringing in also, although it's probably not going to make it until 27. Cascading user-defined lists, data lookups, virtual folders, those things take a lot of time, and they're pushing some of those connector use cases a little further out because we need to deliver on virtual foldering. We need to deliver on data lookups. We need to deliver on parent-child lists. These are things that have been on our list for a long time, and now that we've got all the modernization well taken care of, by this time, we'll be in a place where we can really start to focus on these more critical and very complex features. Lastly is Linux containers. Once we've got all these unified web servers up, and all the capabilities are there, it's a point in which we can start to deploy in Linux, and take the costs for Windows Server completely out of the equation when it comes to deployment of the application. You'll be able to deploy the entire app in a Docker environment or a Kubernetes environment, or whatever your scheduler of choice is, or you can just run the containers yourself if you wish as just a pod. But nonetheless, having those containers allows you to step back from Windows Server and look at the gamut of cloud solutions out there to be able to deploy the application. Okay, so I've talked a lot, and I have some allergies this week, and so my voice is a little rough. So I'm going to stop for a moment, take a glass of water, and open some things up for questioning after two things. I really encourage you to see the community pages. If you haven't been there, I would love it if you go and take a look and see what's out there. If you have ideas, bring them to the community. If you have news or you have questions, you want to post something in the forum, this is a great place. It's a great hub for customers and partners and everyone that's using, including internals here at OpenText. We all use it. It's a great landing page for AppEnhancer.
Interested in what Queso can do for you? Subscribe to our channel now and check out these videos.